Welcome, everyone, to Wizards and Warp Drives, the podcast where two grown-ass men get deeply nerdy about the things they love. My name's Nacho, and joining me, as per usual, is the mighty glue stick himself, Mr. AJ Pickett.
How's it going?
Fucking nailed it. No, I didn't. I stuttered.
Well, I was close.
Yeah.
It's only our, fourth episode?
Fourth.
I think so, yeah.
Fourth. What's been going on, mate? Sunday.
I know. It's winter. It's really winter now. Whereas winter is as New Zealand gets, really. So, it's slightly frosty in the morning.
My lawn is crispy.
Crispy.
And my deck is... apparently that's a funny word for us Kiwis to say. Deck.
Yes, our deck, or however they call it in America.
My deck is slippery. I almost slipped over my own deck.
Sounds normal to us. Beer is 3 words for us. Beer, and beer. It's the same thing. What's
been going on, mate?
I've been making lots and lots of videos on YouTube.
I have seen.
Yeah, I've ramped up my production schedule quite a lot. Mainly to avoid real life issues, as you do. Dive into your work to avoid anything else.
We're escapists in every sense of the word, mate.
Yeah. And that involved lots of research for like the Lords of Hell for D&D, which is diving back into a lot of old stuff, which is appropriate for the topic of today's podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about D&D.
Yeah, I've been diving in. I don't tell the Pinkertons, but I got the latest D&D book a week earlier than it was meant to be released. Quests from the Infinite Staircase.
Nice.
So that's a new anthology of some old 80s adventures, mostly first edition AD&D. There, I think, is one basic. It's got stuff like the Lost City, Pharaoh, Lost Caverns of Socanth. I'll never pronounce that. Socanth.
Yeah. And
obviously the main one in here that I was really interested in, and the reason I bought the book, is one by Mr. Gygax himself called Expeditions to the Barrier Peaks, which is
that's
sci-fi. So
yeah, laser guns and veggie pygmies.
Yep. So it's got stats there now for laser guns and stuff like that. So even if I don't play the adventure, I got stuff to play with. So yeah, I'm what I've read so far, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm quite keen to run it. Well, I like anthology books. Tales of the Yawning Portal, Ghost of Saltmarsh. I enjoy those books. They're my favorite, probably 5 years. So.
I just noticed when I was doing because I did a video just released about travel through the Nilantha Isles in my alter ego as the Sage of Candlekeep, while he's also talking about Baalzebul and that drama. And of course the Nilantha Isles are full of pirates and stuff, but also that's where Saltmarsh is located officially for 5th edition. So it's both. It's a location in 2
setting, I think.
Yeah, it's a location in 2 worlds now, which is interesting.
Yep. Yep. I'm just looking at my map of the Sword Coast now. I think it's kind of near Moonshay, isn't it?
Yeah,
Moonshay
it's just below Moonshay, across the road from Candlekeep, pretty much, or the Dragon's Head Peninsula. God, I know that without even looking at the map. Terrible.
Fuck, we're nerds.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's what I wanted to get to when I started doing these videos in the first place, is to know the Forgotten Realms like it was a real place.
But surreal moment for me. Mr. Ryan Doyle from the Verdigris table, who you play in a Beck Me game with.
Oh yeah.
So he invited me on his YouTube channel to do an interview, which is really nice. I think that's going up in a couple of weeks. He's just released a really cool book called The Grandmaster's Compodium of Explosive Creation. So I had to play around with that. So shout out to Ryan, and check him out on YouTube.
Sounds good. What's the book about?
It's a cookbook for inspiration. So you use all the dice. It's really to help with character creation and backstory at the table. So I can personally see it being used as a really good tool for session 0, where you all roll dice and you choose a background. I chose Animal Whisper. I was torn towards Weirdo at first, but I decided to go with Animal Whisperer. And you just roll dice on various tables, and each table gives you an inspiration, and you build off that, and then all of a sudden you've got a backstory. So I'm going to use it in my next game as part of my session 0. I'm going to make everyone play role characters together and use Ryan's book. So
cool.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's on Drive-Thru RPG as well.
Nice.
Yeah, and some new trailers came out. I don't know if you want to have any thoughts on those. Gladiator 2, Captain America, Brave New World, and Time Bandits.
Oh yeah, I've heard about Time Bandits. I saw the. I didn't know there was a Captain America movie coming out.
Yeah, Sam Wilson and Harrison Ford is taking over the role of Thunderbolt Ross.
Oh yeah,
and they're going to introduce the Red Hulk.
Oh shit! Okay,
and they navigated the moustache problem as well by not giving him a moustache.
Yeah. A Hulk with a moustache is too much. Too much.
Always my issue with Red Hulk was, where's the moustache go? Does that shrink into his face when he
turns into a lip? Just turns into his lip. Yeah.
He sucks it up his nose as he gets angry.
Like the Iron Man always gets the credit for being the start of the MCU, but really it was Captain America when you think about it. I think Captain America came around before Iron Man? It felt like it did. I could be wrong. Shit.
Yeah, we would have to. Yeah, I don't want to misquote and get.
Anyway,
I don't want to get yelled. I don't want to get yelled at on the internet if I get
somebody at me in the comments.
Yeah. So, anyway, we're going to continue our journey into the history of Dungeons and Dragons. I believe we got up to 1985. So I'll do a little bit of a recap, obviously, because it's been a couple of weeks. So Gary Gygax and Don Kay founded TSR in 73. In 74, Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson created the original Dungeons and Dragons. In 77, we got AD&D and Basic. In the late 70s, early 80s, we got the Satanic Panic, which actually boosted the sales of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. No such thing as bad publicity, they say.
Yeah. And then also Don Kay had passed away, and the Bloom brothers basically took over the company. They had no idea how to run a company. They just inherited it. So they drove it to the ground. And then in 83, Frank Menzer released what we know as the Beckme system. Why Gary Gygax went off and made a cartoon.
Yeah. and had a Playboy mansion, and quite a lifestyle change. I don't think Luke Gygax talks about that period of his life very much. Must have been interesting.
Going to LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Gary Gygax. We'll start off around 1984. So Gary Gygax moved to Los Angeles to make. His intention was to actually go make a D&D movie. He spent $500,000 US on an unproduced screenplay.
Wow.
Of TSR's money.
Yeah. Mind you, compared to today's movie budgets, there's a drop in the bucket, but that's a lot.
That's just a script. That's just a screenplay.
Yeah.
That's not a movie.
Yeah.
That's just hiring a writer.
I heard the other day there was a movie that some big star was trying to make, and they got as far as set design was done. They had costumes and everything, and then it all fell apart. Can you imagine being the people who made the sets and all the costumes and that, and then you hear that the movie's not even going to be made? Oh, that would be brutal.
There's loads of stories like that. June's got quite a few things. Other ways, old Gary was wasting money of TSRs as he overspent on IP crossovers, which I knew of one of them.
Pay attention, was the coast.
I didn't know about the third one. So one was Conan the Barbarian.
Yep.
One was Indiana Jones, and I didn't even know this existed. Apparently, there was a 2001 Space Odyssey Dungeons and Dragons adventure.
I did not know that either. I knew about the Conan. I didn't know about Indiana Jones either. Interesting.
Yeah. So Conan was came out at the same time, I believe, as Conan the Destroyer.
Right. Yeah. Great movie.
I think these were just one-offs.
Bombata.
Yeah.
Oh man, the guy that played Bombata in that movie, he should have had a movie of his own. Honestly, such a huge individual. Like he made Arnold Schwarzenegger look tiny, and Arnie's like 6'4".
There's this photo of
There's Andre the Giant on one side and that guy on the other, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is in the middle looking like a child. It's so funny.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Arnie was talking about how just naturally strong that guy was. It's incredible.
Imagine going to the toilet after those three have been.
Yeah, you'd be able to smell the testosterone.
So, and also the Bloom brothers, we talked about this the other week. They were spending money on others. They weren't business. They didn't have any business sense. They funded getting a boat out of Lake Geneva for some reason.
Yeah, they were. A shipwreck. So I don't know why people take boats on lakes in the first place.
The satanic
coming from a classic, island-born person.
Anyway, TSR was starting to lose money. Sales were dropping. D&D, the novelty of D&D had worn off with the general public a little bit by this time.
Mm-hmm.
So he met. It was actually Gygax. Actually, is the one that hired Lorraine Williams. Ironically, I did not know this. Lorraine Williams. So he was introduced. He met a guy in Hollywood called Flint Dial. Now, Flint Dial is actually the guy that created two really popular cartoons in the 80s, the Transformers and G.I. Joe.
Wow.
Now, his sister is Lorraine Williams. So he introduced Gygax to Lorraine Williams. He then sent Lorraine Williams to TSR to basically run the business. The company was $1.5 million in debt.
Oof.
Instead of running the business, what she did is she went to TSR and she just bought the Bloom brothers out. Then she got the majority of TSR. Then she kicked Gygax out of the company in 1985.
In a fateful board meeting where he basically walked in and was like, "What's going on?" Because they were all there. Yeah. It's a fun day when all of the managers show up. We had that at a casino I ran one. I was in one time, and all the managers showed up, and it's like, oh, what went on? What's happened? Oh, it turns out one of the people in HR stole a lot of money off the company. Ooh,
I think Gygax actually even tried to make another game, and she just took him to court and shut it down before it could even get into development.
Yeah. Basically everything that he did when he was working at TSR was owned by TSR, so he couldn't just go off and do his own thing.
Lorraine Williams has some interesting facts, to be honest. She owns the rights to Buck Rogers.
Yes, now that I did know. Yeah, bizarre, but true.
Yeah, she's not a nerd at all. She was a business lady. She did not understand Dungeons & Dragons. She did not understand the game. She didn't care about the game. But she was a smart business lady. She did a lot of good, and she also did a lot of bad.
She's like a microcosm of Hasbro when you think about it. Because she's got that 6 degrees of separation because G.I. Joe and Transformers are both IP that are owned by Hasbro now. So and actually G.I. Joe was owned all the way through. There's an interesting story about G.I. Joe. They changed G.I. Joe during the Vietnam War because war became unpopular. They changed him to Action Man. And then as soon as war became popular again, back to G.I. Joe, which is basically the moral compass of Hasbro for you in a nutshell.
I never knew war went out of vogue.
Yeah. But as soon as they smell the change in public sentiment where the money's involved, that's where their morals go. It's like, oh yes, no, we don't support war, so he's going to be Action Man. Like, we won't announce it; we'll just quietly push it that way. But he's still got all the same accessories and everything. He's just Action Man.
Do you remember? I remember the coolest Action Man. Well, it's not even an Action Man, but the coolest doll. Something I'd like to talk about at some point was the $6 Million Man.
Okay.
You could it had a telescope in his eye, and you'd hold the figure up, and you'd put your eye behind his head, and you could use it as a Do you remember that at all? Was that just?
I remember the show. I didn't know there was two. I know. I unfortunately
didn't have one. My neighbor had one, and I was allowed to play with it.
I was very lucky to get one transformer. It was a transforming tank. It was a proper transformer, not like a knockoff one. And that was like I knew that was.
It wasn't a GoBot.
No, it was a proper transformer. And it was cool. I really loved it.
You're Flash, man. I got GoBots in my house.
Yeah, no, that was it. That was the they bring out that present for Christmas. But yeah, no, we weren't an affluent family by any means. I grew up on a steady diet of mince, cabbage, and onions, apples, and carrots, and sweet turnips.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so so Lorraine Williams bought TSR. It was 1.5 million in debt. So she obviously had to make some key actions and introduce some policies. First thing she did, stop game testing. Why are we paying people to play games?
Yeah. So, yes. No game testing, and also no feedback on what was selling and what wasn't selling, which is interesting. No surveys. Yeah.
Yeah,
expanded the line, brought out a glut of Birthright, which was a setting which I think in the latest handbook or something that they bring out, they talk about the different settings for AD&D, and they don't even mention Birthright, so they've just erased it from their history.
Oh well, there was a tactic. So she the business model was release new settings, capitalize on the popular ones, and discard the failures. That was her business statement.
Yeah.
So that was a business model. Obviously, she expanded it to board games, comic books, magazines, novels. She kept trying to pump Buck Rogers into it.
Mm-hmm.
No one gave a fuck.
No. No.
Do kids know who Buck Rogers is?
Buck Rogers only went for like 2 seasons or something. It was a very short-lived.
It's 1930s. It's a 1930s property.
Yeah.
But yeah, for us, it was a TV show in the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah. So back when Buck Rogers came out, it was kind of like rehashing all of the stuff from the 80s that we have to live through now. So Buck Rogers was kind of like for an older audience when you think about it. And then, of course, trying to bring it into D&D didn't really
similar
gel.
To Flash Gordon.
Yeah, very similar. American, well, you can't really get more American Flash Gordon either.
Buck Rogers had a little robot called Twinkie and a extremely attractive female sidekick.
Oh, Erin Gray. I've still got the hot. She was my first crush. I did a magnifying glass wood burning of portrait of her. That was one of the first portraits of a person I ever did. It was terrible, but I still remember it because it's burned into my retinas now.
Yeah, and there was this one particular episode that I'm sure you'll remember as soon as I mention it, where I think it was some telepathic dwarfs were trying to undress. Do you remember?
I don't remember that episode. I'll have to ask it the next time I see it at a convention. So that episode with the perverted dwarves. Yeah,
that was a time in history where young Nacho discovered some new feelings in his body. He didn't know yet.
I felt some changes coming over me. Why am I so fascinated with this jumpsuit that she's wearing? Yeah.
So second edition. Yeah, she just created all these settings, and if it worked, they keep supporting it. It didn't work, they just swept it. So we got Dark Sun.
Yeah.
Ravenloft, Forgotten Realms, Spelljammer, El Quantum, that was the Egyptian. See, I don't remember that one.
No.
Yeah, that was
that must have been one of the fizzles. Yeah.
Yep. She obviously, second edition was a strategy to distance itself from Gygax. It was pretty much the fuck you, Gary Gygax edition.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
We're not paying you any money. She brought in Zeb Cook, David Zeb Cook, as the lead designer. She was really good at picking. So people she actually hired under her tender was she hired. So she signed. She understood the importance of the artist. She understood the importance of the art. Was selling the books. So she got people like Jeff Easley, Clyde Cadwell, Larry Elmore, Keith Parkinson on the permanent payroll for TSR, making the art.
Yeah.
She also hired Jeff Grubb, Ed Greenwood, Douglas Niles, and Hickman and Weiss.
Yeah. Ed had been, I think Ed had been sort of wafting around the office, but he hadn't been on staff. He was just a contributing contributing author to Dragon
Yeah,
Magazine.
yeah. So none of these people would have contributed what they've contributed to this game. Um, she she was really good at that. She really struggled. So she was good at like getting talent and recruiting talent.
Mm-hmm.
She actually sucked at keeping them and building relationships. Um,
Yeah.
TSO really struggled to retain them with like they were underpaying authors. I think they paid. So they paid for the first 3 Dragonlance Chronicles. So they played Weiss and Hickman $12,000 yeah, $12,000 I think for the 3 books.
Wow.
After the success of those books, Wiseman and Hickman got offered with $90,000 to write the Dark Sword trilogy. So they just left.
Right.
Same with Salvador, they left.
Also, like they were very strident. Like Tracy Hickman has been a very strident religious campaigner as well. He's had some very, very vocal issues about things in the past. And that might have contributed to him leaving as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thaco stayed, which was a prominent rule mechanic. I think they cut out half orcs. They really tried to sort of cut back on the whole demon, make it more.
Yeah, with the Satanic Panic, they changed the names of demons so that they weren't called demons. They were called Bartizu and the Nine Hells and stuff changed, and Yugolovs were instead of daemons, for instance, or demons, depends on how you want to pronounce it. So they changed a lot of things to basically remove themselves from any sort of religious iconography, particularly Christian iconography. They didn't give a shit about any other old religions or anything. Or any other cultures. They just cared
Christianity.
About. They only cared about feedback in America. Really, that was all they were concerned about.
Yeah. They sort of banned material that she thought was anti-God.
Yeah.
So demons, devils, I think evil characters were even banned in 2nd edition. Yeah,
we're talking. Well, yes, kind of. Well, they strongly discourage you from playing evil characters for sure. We were talking about this before we started recording, but in Dragon Magazine, I think it was issue 28. Remember, I was talking about they were sort of firing a shot over the bow. It wasn't Gary Gygax that wrote that article; it was another guy. But it's definitely in there, and they were talking about the early history of the Nine Hells, and Satan is specifically mentioned as being in control of it and stuff. And then he was deposed by Beelzebul, and then he was deposed by Asmodeus and stuff. So it was in the research that I was doing for the last video. But it's really interesting that that's in there. So if it's in Dragon Magazine, then it's technically still canon, unless they sort of refute it. And so it was in there for sure, and it's definitely been removed, but it's probably still in the law. Sorry.
Maybe just explain what Dragon Magazine is and Dungeon Magazine.
Right. Well, Dragon Magazine was edited by Tim Kask. Was contributed by lots of different people. Gary Gygax originally had an editorial in there and lots of articles that he wrote, and including extensive writing about pole arms and pikes because it was Swiss heritage. It was and has been during its entire reign a really, really good resource. I think the only thing that sort of rivals it today that I've seen was like Arcadia that MCDM was putting out. But we definitely Dragon Magazine I think contributed so much to the longevity of D&D in general. Like you couldn't
it come out monthly, eh?
Yeah. And they were quite extensive at some point. They were like, 100-page sort of issue sort of thing or more. And they were really good value.
There were two. Dragon Magazine was kind of aimed at the DM and Dungeon Magazine was aimed at the player.
Yeah, Dragon Magazine was kind of like the Unearthed Arcana, anything goes. You can sort of shove stuff in there. They had short stories, they had reviews, all that sort of stuff. It was a gamut of different things. And Dungeon Magazine was adventures that you ran. So that was more like a zine sort of thing.
I think Dragon Magazine went all the way up to 4th edition. I think it died in 4th edition from memory.
They went electronic, and then they just cut back on they got rid of all the electronic stuff when they changed over companies.
Yeah. But there's a lot of good stuff. So obviously, I'm running a game in Skullport, and most of my information that I've got from about Skullport has come from Dragon Magazine.
Yeah,
that's when most of the
one of my big warnings to people about buying prepaying PDFs for PDFs and stuff like that. I just noticed that they got rid of Minsk and Boo's miscellany thingy. That was the book that they put out for Extra Life that had tons and tons of typos and stuff in it, and then they've just basically gotten rid of it off the D&D Beyond site. And all of those Dragon magazines, the electronic Dragon magazines that people paid for in subscription, they're all gone too. So you don't actually own anything that you pay for that's a PDF from Wizards of the Coast. They will take it away from you.
Yeah.
And I think there should be legal precedent about that when you pay for something, if it's an electronic product, then you own it, particularly because they don't want you to download it. They don't want you to actually own it. They just want you to access it. So really what you're doing is you're paying for access to it. And they can take that away at any time, and they can change and edit it at any time. At the moment, they're trying to tell us that it's a good thing, that they can change and update things. That it's also got a very nasty side to it too, that they can just take it away.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the benefits of having something as a PDF.
When it's done ethically, it's fantastic.
But yeah, I still prefer a physical book as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I prefer my money real,
Yeah.
Don't trust this Bitcoin.
You just can't beat the smell of opening a book as well,
Yeah, true. Yeah, we are both bibliophiles, so I like
walking into a secondhand bookstore I love the smell of a secondhand bookstore.
That's like walking into a church for me.
Yeah, a good coffee and a secondhand bookstore, and I could just spend a whole day there just wandering around.
Yeah.
Anyway, so key books that were released for 2nd edition. Obviously, we got the 3 core books. They changed the name of the Monster Manual to the Monster Compendium. Compendium. Sorry. Yep.
Can we talk about Dark Sun for a second? That's a really interesting.
So I've got
setting.
that on here. So we've got Planescape came out, and we got Planescape, we got Ravenloft, we got Dark Setting, we got Forgotten Realms, we got Spelljammer, and they also did a rehash of Tomb of Horrors, which I don't think was that popular, but yeah.
Spelljammer is a total ripoff of Space 1889. If you've never seen any covers, just go and Google Space 1889 and you'll think that you're looking at covers for Spelljammer because it's exactly the same, pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like John Carter, Barsoom, Mars era stuff. That's where that sort of comes from.
Underrated film as well. Sorry, I love John Carter.
Yeah,
John Carter film.
well, that's because some executive thought that nobody would watch a movie if they had Mars in the title, so he said, just call it John Carter, and like nobody knew what it was about, and they didn't advertise it, and it just bombed because of one executive, and he got seriously fired.
I like that film. I think it was a really good.
It was
film.
A great movie. Yeah, it shouldn't have failed.
Back to Spelljammer. It
was supposed to be a trilogy, by the way.
Yeah, no, good books, man. Same author as Tarzan.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Dark Sun was a really interesting setting, and it still is a really interesting setting because it's very much a departure from the other D&D worlds. It was much more like one of the original inspirations for Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, Jack Vance's Dying Earth series was where they came up with the Fire and Forget magic system, where you had to relearn a spell after you cast it. So Dark Sun is more like the Dying Earth sort of thing. And then Monty Cook later on expanded that and basically made Numenera, which is pretty much Dying Earth. You've got 7 civilizations or something like that that have been and gone on the Earth, and now it's like this tired old planet with all these old relics and artifacts. Dark Sun used to be a lush green world that was populated by nothing but halflings, hobbits. This is why I love this setting so much.
This is why you like it.
Yeah. But wait, it's so tragic.
If you ever want to bait AJ, he's like a boulet.
Yeah,
he's attracted to halflings. Anyway.
Yeah. But if you're like a 5-foot girl that comes up to me at a Gen Con, don't even try. So the the setting was originally all halflings, and it was a lush green world with oceans and stuff like that. And then this wizard, this mutant wizard, basically came along. He invented magic, and there was no magic on the planet, essentially. So he had to draw magical energy from somewhere. So he took it from the star that was orbiting that they were orbiting around. And of course, that took away vitality from the planet, and the planet also lost most of its ocean. So it became instead of a lush world, it became a parched world. And then it happened again, and at the same time, he was mutating all of the people on the planet, and now they all look like other races. But fun fact:
Okay.
all the races from Dark Sun are all descended from hobbits.
So it's a fantasy setting about global warming.
Yeah, yeah. It's about power
So,
and corruption and the abuse of a resource. You could say so.
yeah.
You can practice magic safely.
It's quite timely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can practice magic safely on Athos, the planet, by gathering natural energies, which are very meager, and also vital energies from creatures and things like that. But if you draw it just unregulated, it will sap the life from the ground and make it permanently barren. It's like salting the earth. So you're literally sucking the planet dry, sort of thing. And it is a very dry planet. There's very few resources. There's no metal. So it's all bone and dinosaurs
I've
and
always,
deserts and
I
stuff.
somehow, I just assumed it was like a Mad Max setting. I've
It
read a
is,
couple of
yeah.
comics.
That's very much the vibe of it. So most of it is just one dystopian citadel, which is ruled by some evil Thulsa Doom bastard. And in some
Yeah.
cases, that ruler is an evil wizard who's actually transformed into a dragon.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what you're contending with. And it's like gladiator games, slavery, Mad Max, cannibalism, all of that's in there. Halflings are cannibal halflings and stuff. So yeah, there's some crazy shit. Dinosaur riding cannibal halflings with bone tipped
So
arrows.
it's dark.
Yeah, it's dark in more ways than one.
So so she was okay with this, but obviously it didn't have any anti-Christian.
Yeah, yeah, it's complete fantasy, so it's fine.
All right.
I don't even know if they have gods on in Athos in the Dark Sun setting.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other second edition books you want to talk about?
Well,
The settings.
Birthright needs a mention, but I think that was mainly, that was second edition.
I've never heard of Birthright.
Birthright was where they used their battle system, which is something they came up with, which they tried to incorporate large scale battles.
Sorry, was that like a red box? It came out in a red box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, battle system was incorporated into a lot of products that they brought out, but it was always optional because they weren't sure whether it was taken with people or not because they didn't do any market research. So they brought out a lot of Birthright products really, really quickly, like just a glut of them, and nobody ended up buying them all. They just like bought the first book, and then that was pretty much it. And that was a pattern that pretty much continued. That people would buy the first thing, and then they just wouldn't buy this glut of other stuff that came out.
She was investing in there was quality issues. So other products as well. I don't know if you know of any of these. She made other things. Do you hear of Dragon Strike, which was like a VHS board game?
Yeah, I've seen the video. It's something.
Oh yeah, apparently there was a video on how to play the game. So it was she thought kids were too stupid to read or couldn't be bothered to read, so they tried these different ways, which were quite. I mean, they were thinking outside the box, so good on them. Yeah. So they had a version of Dungeons and Dragons where the rules came on a VHS. So you didn't have to read the rule book; you could just watch a VHS to learn how to play.
Mm-hmm.
They also did one where the rules came out on a CD-ROM, CD-ROM version as well. She kept making Buck Rogers. She really was obsessed by making this IP work. They spent a lot of money on that. The Dritz novels, they took off. she had a. They were all produced by TSR.
It's funny
and obviously
they refer to them by that one character, and he was pretty much invented in a parking lot by Salvatore when he was basically told,
Yep.
"Oh, we need another character," because
Wolfgar
was supposed to be the main guy,
the main character.
Yeah,
but everyone sort of generated towards the. Oh, who's this like mysterious dark elf?
Yeah, I have to say I don't normally give a negative review about things, but there was one particular book in that entire series which focused very much on Wolfgar's alcoholism and mental breakdown, and it sucked. That was a very bad. That was a bad novel. I'm afraid.
I've only read the first
right.
two trilogies. Yeah, so
I haven't caught up to date on them because there's a big war that takes place, and Driss is riding around on a dragon, and all the orcs, many arrows orcs, and the dwarves go at it, and the dwarves come out second best, pretty much. Now you're up to date with the Forgotten Realms. There you go. So Citadel smells like walk now.
There was another product that came out, but I'll talk about that a bit later because that was kind of the product that killed them.
Yeah.
So challenges that. So she made the company money. She turned it around. She got it out of debt, but then she quickly got it back into debt. So challenges, they had a lot of quality control issues due to just rapid releasing and lack of playtesting.
She kind of had like a double-edged problem where like there's piranhas in the pool, so she jumped in with a shotgun and blasted the piranhas, and then noticed that the pool was leaking.
Yeah. They were poor decisions. They were overproducing things that didn't sell well, and also major competitors suddenly started to appear. There were two that really sort of started to have an effect on the popularity of D&D at the time. One was from Games Workshop called Warhammer, and the other one was from a little company called Wizards of the Coast, and that was called Magic the Gathering.
Yeah. Games Workshop was kind of like almost like a nightmare of their own creation, because they could have basically been Games Workshop if they had just partnered up with them like they were supposed to in the first place. Because Games Workshop was all set up to make the miniatures and stuff with them. And fun fact, in New Zealand, they produced a lot of D&D miniatures by Grenadier. And you get sets of them. I've got a few sets of them here. They're still floating around. And that was because it was so expensive to ship lead miniatures around the world that they decided to make them closer to home for the far-flung audiences in the Antipodes, like us over in here in Australia and New Zealand. So they had this plan of like having manufacturing centres in Britain and New Zealand and various other places, but it didn't work out in Britain like they planned, and so they sort of went, well, we'll make our own version of D&D. Kind of.
So I mean, Citadel. They were the beginning of Games Workshop, and they were so TSR originally hired them to make the official D&D miniatures, and they basically neglected on that contract a little bit, and Games Workshop were
a lot. Yeah,
it's a whole new podcast. It's a whole it's a whole podcast in itself,
right?
So I'm just gonna
Warhammer. We're definitely gonna have a Warhammer issue. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Warhammer, it was because you got the interesting thing is like White Dwarf magazine, which was another contemporary, kind of like a Dragon magazine, but it was a more
still going, isn't it?
Still going, yep. Now it's very much Warhammer, but at the time it was Warhammer D&D and sci-fi games. It was a much more comprehensive industry zine, even more so than Dragon. But Dragon also included stuff from Warhammer and various other things as well. So there wasn't so much a what do you call it? Our village, your village sort of thing. It was more a cohesive hobby at the time. It was more like a community than it is now. And Warhammer had that very British vibe to it. Like we were talking about in 2000 AD magazine, it was much more zany. There was mutations. There was all sorts of stuff. It was balls to the wall. They didn't really care. And Britain didn't have that sort of, like, the Satanic Panic wouldn't have happened in Britain at that time. It just wasn't the mood. And like parents didn't give a damn what their kids were doing. They were more concerned about like people walking by and wearing tartan with safety pins through their noses. Punk rock was going on, so they didn't care about role playing games. It's like, oh, the kids are inside playing with books. Thank God, they're not outside setting fire to cars and
we lived opposite a a railway line. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike down the driveway and then back, and my mum would be like, "We should put a gate on because he's going to get run over by the railway by the train." And my dad was like, "Well, he's only going to do it once."
Yeah, so, yeah. My playground.
That was the attitude.
My playground from the age of about 2 until about 5 was about the age of 6, actually. Tongariro Power Station was across a marsh and a paddock from our place, and that was where we went to play around with old industrial machinery and stuff. So, yeah, I know what you mean. Basically, be home by 6 o'clock for dinner, and we'll patch you up if you're bleeding,
Or you'll get a strapping.
Yeah. If the kids are around, we're only concerned if they're quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what were we talking about? Games Workshop.
Yeah, before
we want to go off on a tangent there.
We went off into old man territory there, yeah. Back in my day. I really did walk to school barefoot in the frost because it was, I lived close to Wairuru. Anyway.
So that's Waiuru's not far from Mount Doom, kids, by the way.
Yeah. I basically lived in the shadow of Mount Doom. That was where I grew up when I was a little kid. And then I moved to sunny Coromandel, so that was more like the Shire. Now I actually live in the Shire, so that's nice. The real Shire over the mountains from.
I still live in the footsteps of Mount Doom.
Right. Yeah. So the Shire, Hobbiton, if those who don't know, is just over the mountains from where I am. It's in the Waikato area, which is a big sort of alluvial plain sort of thing. Over here, over the mountain, I'm in this nice little cove called the Bay of Plenty that basically grows everything. We can grow bananas here. So it's fantastic. I love it.
Anyway, well, I mean, I think we'll save Games Workshop and Warhammer for a different episode. But yeah, so they, in a nutshell, TSR hired these guys to make the official D&D minis. That deal didn't go down, so they thought, fuck it, we'll make our own game with blackjack and hookers.
Yep.
Which became Warhammer 40k eventually.
Yeah.
But this was taken off in the 90s around the same time as second edition AD&D. So there were just different games that people could play.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this card game took off, 1990 that came out.
Yeah, it just sort of arrived with a boom. Like the first time I heard about it, my cousin arrived. He was a couple of years younger than me. And he said, "Oh, have you seen this game, Magic the Gathering?" I was like, "No." It looked really complicated to me, and he just sort of showed me how to play. And I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I get it." And we played a couple of games, and then he went away, and I didn't have any cards. And then I met this guy that I'd gone to school with, Wes, and we were playing over in Australia quite intensively, like Thursday night Magic and stuff in Sydney. And
yeah, that was where I. No, sorry.
Oh, that was where I got a collection of cards, actual physical cards. But that was the last time I actually bought cards, was way back then, and that was like 2000. Now it's 24 years later, and it's still going, and I'm still playing the electronic version. Oh, you've actually got physical cards. Wow. The Lord of the Rings. Ugh. Yeesh.
So, yeah, there's a bunch of people at my work that play Magic the Gathering, and they keep inviting me, but I have an addictive personality and a limited bank account.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit scared about getting into it.
Yeah, they do call it wallet the emptying. So, yeah, it is very expensive to keep up with it, particularly these days because they release so many sets now because of the electronic game. The alchemy format that you play online exists solely because there are cards that are only electronic now because they realize that nobody will buy that many sets of cards in that short amount of time. But you basically have to buy a whole new set of cards every 3 months now, pretty much.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lorraine Williams looked at these two properties that were competing with them and was like, fuck, I know what. She decided to compete with Magic the Gathering, and she was like, "What's something that D&D's got that they don't?" And she thought, "We've got dragons, we've got dice." So she released something called Dragon Dice,
Yeah.
which was meant to be a direct competition to Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Uh, do you remember Dragon Dice?
No, I didn't. I have not personally seen any Dragon Dice. I do know about the Dragon Dice. I do know what happened. So yeah, I do
Yep.
know that there was legends of a buried container of Dragon Dice somewhere. They couldn't get rid of them, so they just buried them somewhere.
Yeah, so there was this thing they had, TSR had with its distributors, where if something didn't sell within a certain amount of time, they could return it.
Yeah.
So Dragon Dice got returned to TSR. Guess how much?
Well, hang on. The first release of Dragon Dice actually did fairly well. Like there was a big
Yeah, no, it did well.
Yeah.
The novelty wore off really fast.
Yeah, essentially nobody saw any need for any additions to it. And because TSR wasn't doing any market research and they weren't doing any customer feedback, they had no idea that the sales numbers that they got would not be supported with a second release or a third release or whatever. But because they had this habit of releasing a glut of products, yeah, they pumped out a lot of dice.
Yeah.
And
guess how much? Have a stab at what you think. How much of this got returned back to TSR?
I'd say about 90% of it.
14 million.
Oh, 14 million.
$14 million worth of stock was returned.
Ouch.
This left TCR in such a predicament that they actually couldn't pay their printing company.
Yeah, they had no money left.
The printing company actually bought their building, which effectively made their own printers their landlords.
Yeah. How bizarre is that? I know it's like a nice gesture on the printer's part to do that, because essentially they take over their rent bills, and stuff. But geez, yeah, and not having any money to produce actual products anymore means you're a non-company. Essentially, you're just an IP holding company. So,
yep.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So in
catastrophic
in 1997, Peter Atkinson, who was the founder, so she just decided to sell. She was just going to sell TSR. It was fucked.
Yeah.
She didn't care about Dungeons and Dragons. And I think they were just going to divvy it up and just sell it as an IP so it could be made as books.
Yeah.
Like the things that were making money were the books, the video games, but the actual role-playing game itself wasn't selling and people weren't playing it. It wasn't in vogue. These other games had taken over. So I know everyone shits on Wizards of the Coast a little bit, but Wizards of the Coast, I mean, at this period actually was the savior. So
yeah,
that was
and they had the best intentions. When they started out, the company culture was entirely different from what it is now. Atkinson was still in charge. He knew what it was like to be a struggling game designer, because his first game design, Robot Wars or whatever it was, didn't do very well.
Yeah, Robo Wars. Yeah,
I don't think it even got nobody wanted to manufacture it. And Magic the Gathering was a hit. Like, it just sort of took off. And full credit to him. That came out of nowhere. That just came out of his brain. So yeah.
Wizards of the Coast itself, the name comes from his D&D group.
Yeah.
It's his Cabal Wizards. So yeah, Peter Atkinson acquired it off TCR in 1997. He did a lot of good. He only had a short tender, but he, immediately he started working on third edition.
Yeah.
Overall,
what TSR should have done is partnered up with him. Essentially, they should have said, "Hey, can you, can you incorporate some of our IP into your product, and we'll do press release, invite you to Gen Con, all that sort of stuff." But no.
Yeah, so he started the development of third edition. He also laid the grounds for the OGL.
Mm-hmm.
And he fostered closer relationships with, so he started reconciling with people like Gygax and Arneson.
Yeah.
He started mending bridges. He only had the property of Dungeons and Dragons from 97 to 1999, where he sold the company to Hasbro for around 350 million.
Yeah. I mean, who could refuse an offer like that, honestly?
Should we just refer to them as the soulless ones from now on?
The evil, yeah. They are literally a rags to riches story. I've researched the entire 100-year history of Hasbro.
I'd be interested to talk about Hasbro. We'll take that down as a future episode, maybe.
Yeah, it'll be a short episode full of a lot of expletives from me. Yeah,
that's right, mate.
I'll probably be accused of being like a.
Yeah, so he left shortly the year before the release of third edition. So third edition came out in 2000. So major things was Monty Cook.
Mm-hmm.
He was the chief designer. They removed the word advance straight away from the title. So that's the end of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It introduced the D20 system, and it implemented the open gaming license.
Yeah. So the D&D that you're playing in 5th edition right now, if you are, is still Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and I will still refer to it as Advanced Dungeons & Dragons because it is. Because to differentiate it from basic D&D. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the D20 system, so we were playing THAC0 before that. So THAC0 was gone. That was just the death of THAC0.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're playing 5th edition, you are now familiar with the D20 system.
Yeah. And this is where I started. I actually started GMing at this stage. So this from 3rd edition, 3.5 and 3rd edition is where I started really paying attention to the rules and reading all the source books and stuff like that. Before I was just a no-nothing player. Very frustrating player for a DM, somebody who doesn't know what their character sheet is. What am I rolling? Yeah. For years.
I still have moments like that.
Yeah, Ashley
in my life.
Ashley would probably be rolling. Well, he's not dead, but he's probably grinding his teeth over me being an official like type D&D person on YouTube. He'd be like, "What?" Yeah. So yeah, this is when I moved from where I was to Hamilton City, and I went to the university there as a mature student. I met a bunch of people who were playing D&D, and that was kind of like how I established my little social group there. And yes, that was right when it was transitioning over from third edition, because 3rd edition was really short. It was only like a couple of years.
I was living in England. I moved from New Zealand. I was in Manchester in 2000 when this came out. I wasn't playing Dungeons and Dragons. I was working in hospitality, so I was doing split shifts.
Yeah, towards when 3rd edition came about, I'd say D&D was at one of its lowest ebbs. Like the online communities through RPG.net and various other places were very, very negative. Very, very like ensconced, old school, grouchy bastards who hated anything new, who just despised anybody who paid any money to the company. There's still those people wafting around, but they're certainly not as vocal as they used to be because they're just sort of drowned out. But back then, they were very much they had a stranglehold on those communities, and they would really bully people who are pro new products. So I like to say that like those people who think that there's stalwarts of the hobby who have been around and supported it all this time, you damn near killed it. And I have no loyalty to them whatsoever because I was there listening to all this shit. And then when the new people coming in, it's like, oh, it's 3.5. And they're like, rah, rah, rah. So yeah, no. Yep. Like if you want to play 2nd edition, fine, play 2nd edition, but stick to your 2nd edition conversations. Don't come into 5th edition conversations and shit on everybody.
Just like what you like, mate.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Don't
stay in your lane. Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
I don't go to car shows and talk about cars because I don't drive cars and I don't have a driver's license. It's pretty simple.
No, just don't shit on what other people like and like what you like.
Don't yuck their yum, as they say.
That's the one. So the D20 system, that was a major thing, a major game changer that's influenced the game since. So obviously that's just the core mechanic is we just use a 20-sided dice for most actions, add modifiers, got to exceed or meet a number. That is something now that is just carried on. We've not looked back.
Yeah. The
not looked
reason
back from
why
that.
we went 3 and then 3.5 is very much
Oh, we'll
because
get to
it's very much
it was
exactly
broken.
like our transition from 5th edition to D&D 2024. So it's just an adjustment more than anything. So it was 3.5 was really just an update of the 3rd edition rules.
So
They're very, very backwards
before
compatible.
we get to 3.5 though,
All right.
I would like to talk about the OGL.
Mhm.
The introduction of the OGL.
Yeah,
and the
so the open
importance of
gaming
the OGL.
license, different from the fan content policy, which is something that I follow and most other YouTubers follow. So the OGL doesn't really concern us unless we're publishers. So the fan content policy just basically means that you can do any sort of, like, I can do any sort of video I want as long as I release it for free to people. It's not behind a paywall. That's the only real rule that applies. Even if it's temporarily behind a paywall and I release it for free in 6 months or whatever, that's still fine. So it's pretty good. The open gaming license was originally intended to be forever, perpetual, in perpetuity, but Americans have legally changed that word somehow. Doesn't mean what we thought it meant. Yeah, its intention was very good. It basically meant, here's the basic system of D&D. So here's the D20 system. We've codified it. We've Monty Cook is very good at this. He's system designed it. He
was a great designer.
Yeah, he's also a creative genius as well. And he's now combined with Bruce Cordell as well, who is very much involved in 3.5 as well. But so the D20 system essentially was like the free basic rules that you get for 5th edition these days. And they had D20 Modern, which also arrived around this time as well, which was also pretty popular. I thought it was like really brutal. Like if you got shot in D20 Modern, that was pretty much the end of your career. Which is fitting because, guns are deadly and everything, but it was kind of sucky as a role-playing game. It wasn't quite the vibe of like, it wasn't like a modern D&D, it was like a totally different sort of vibe. More like Warhammer. You don't want to get hit with a gun in Warhammer 40k or Rogue Trader. Anyway, so the open gaming license was great, and it opened up third-party publishers to use the D&D rules system to create their own products and create their own alternate settings and things like that. So there was a explosion of third-party products, much like there's an explosion of third-party products in 5th edition.
Yeah, so the point of this, I mean, the whole reason the OGL was thought to be a good idea was because of 2nd edition's downfall of overproducing stuff.
Yeah.
So,
let's not risk anything on us making harebrained settings and stuff. Let's let other people do it.
Let's make our community make our books. Yeah, we'll just make
perfect
the system
example
now.
of that is the Guide to the Forgotten Realms. Do I have it around somewhere? Oh, Grand History of the Realms. Here it is. So this book here, Grand History of the Forgotten Realms, which I'm holding up for Nacho to see, is...
Yeah, it's always good in an audio format.
Yeah, this was originally... Hang on. There we go.
It's drits on the cover.
You can see it with your ears. Yes, it's got drits on the cover with Guinevere. So this was originally by Brian R. James. So he was not working for Wizards of the Coast. He just did this himself. He archived and researched and found all the dates and set everything into an actual cohesive calendar, which the company had not done. And then when they saw how popular this was, they bought it and published it. So they set a great precedent that way. And
I think they released two sort of third-party books at the same time they released the core books.
Yeah.
Like in conjunction with the release of the core system, they released third-party books.
Yeah. Sorry, I've started reading the book. I must put it away. So the Grand History of the Realms was a fantastic product. It's been around for it's still relative to this year's. In fact, I think we should probably do an update on it soon because there's been, sufficient amount of stuff that's happened.
Yeah, so basically the OGL, we've heard a lot about it recently. It was introduced in 2000 by Wizards of the Coast. coinciding with the release of third edition, it allowed third-party publishers to create content compatible with the D&D system reference document, the SRD, which is still a word we hear a lot of.
Yep, it's now in the public domain, so
Yep.
anybody can use the rules. You don't have to.
It was designed to expand the D&D ecosystem and encourage a wide variety of gaming content.
Yeah,
enabled flourishing third-party market with many new publishers and creators contributing to the game.
Because it's now in public domain. Essentially, Wizards of the Coast gave up the 5th edition core basic rule set and also, older versions of it to the public domain archive thingy, which means that essentially you don't need to put an attribution page like the OGL demanded that you have a page saying, this is derived from Dungeons & Dragons, all that sort of stuff. So there was a legal requirement to have that page of blurb at the back of your product. If it even sort of remotely mentioned Dungeons & Dragons stuff, it was usually a good safety net to put that in the back of your book just in case, even if you didn't really need to. But the interesting thing with Lorraine Williams' era and 2nd edition, and particularly Dragon Magazine and all the monster manuals and stuff that they poured out, they were really, 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 really sloppy with the way they handled contracts. So you could contribute something and they wouldn't give you a contract. They would, if they did, it would give you a first use contract, which means that they had the right to publish it before anybody else did. It didn't mean that they owned it. So, for instance, the Boulet, the Land Shark, is owned entirely by Tim Kask. It's not owned by Wizards of the Coast. It's not owned by Hasbro. The Mind Flayer isn't owned by them. Various other quite important Githyanki are not owned by them. Various other things that they have splashed everywhere, and they will, if somebody overseas, like a company making dice in China, for example, make a set of Mind Flayer dice, then they will try and shut them down. And the only way that the Chinese company can defend themselves is to fly all the way to America, hire a $30,000 American lawyer, and fight it in an American court, because the American legal system has set it up so that you have to fight copyright claims on American turf.
Yeah, I mean, it was their downfall was she had so many talented people. That's what's frustrating.
Yeah.
She sucked at relationships.
Yeah.
They're just really bad at business relationships.
Relationship via lawyer is the name of the game these days. NDAs, like you'll hear Ed Greenwood and those guys joke about NDAs like till my teeth hurt. But it's really, really annoying when they do that.
Yeah, so they had the talent. And they just they fucked them.
Yeah.
They all left. It's sad because it could have been, well, it is what it is.
Yeah. By the way, to all the agents and people out there who are ever approaching me with an NDA, you can shove it up your ass.
I mean, 3rd edition only lasted 3 years. So, I mean, people that are moaning about, 5.5 coming out so soon. We got 3rd edition in 2000. We got 3.5 in 2003.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why did we need 3.5? Was 3rd edition broken?
It had some issues. Yeah, it had a few issues. It had a few teething issues. I'm not entirely sure what they were, but they remember how I said that the fan base at the time was really toxic?
Yep.
Yeah. So sales just were bad. So they thought, we need to do something about this. So, they updated and re-released the whole thing. That, of course, caused its own, it's nothing but a money grab, blah, blah, blah. But everybody was playing 3rd edition, 3.5 edition.
Well, you'd be pissed off if you just bought the cool rule books and then to be told 3 years later that
they were. All of my friends, all my new friends were quite pissed off that they were buying them.
Yeah.
But we did.
And then you'd be hesitant because you'd be like, well, how long are you going to support this one for?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing there were other systems, because the OGL obviously kind of bit them in the arse a little bit as well.
It did,
which we'll get to when we get to 4th edition, because they created their own competition by allowing other people to use.
But only because they saw them as competition. That's the thing, though. They always they've got this siloed mentality, and that's that whole thing of like no customer feedback and no market research and stuff like that. So they just see dollar signs, and that's all they see. They don't really care about the the feelings of the fan base and things, and they don't really listen to the fans, which is a pity because they could take so much inspiration from them. Yeah. But yeah, all of the same sentiments that everybody's got right now today, contemporarily, about the 5th edition to D&D 2024. You can see what they're doing by calling it D&D 2024, right?
Yeah.
They no longer have to update an edition. All they have to do is say, well, this is this year's version of D&D. This is this year's version of D&D. And it'll be faster and faster and faster because it's all going to be electronic, just like the Magic the Gathering card sets. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Yeah. So here's my grand prediction. Everything that you see them doing in the Magic the Gathering arena is exactly what they're going to be doing with PDF releases for Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons and Dragons. I can guarantee you. So
the soulless ones
don't go
have their way.
Moaning and saying that nobody ever told you, because I just did.
AJ's been up all night editing videos,
yeah.
I apologise if he's a little bit old man ranty today, but that's all right. We'll get him back on track.
Yeah.
So Jonathan Tweet was the lead designer on this one as well.
Yep.
On 3.5.
We had
Monty Cook was
some interesting artistic directions that they went in 3.5. They changed the look of the halflings quite dramatically. They changed the look of half-orcs and elves. We also got Savage Species, which was an expansion of the rules that allowed you to essentially turn any monster race into the listed amounts of monsters they had then allowed, which is quite extensive. So you could play a troll, for instance, as a first level character. So you had a character class and a troll racial template, essentially. And the exchange for that was the fact that you had a negative sort of experience point. So you had to gain much more experience points to go up to second level and then third level. So you lagged behind everybody else, but you had all of those upfront monster abilities right from the get-go. So you had troll regeneration and stuff. Then they had feats, and feats were much more chopped into little pieces in 3.5 as opposed to 5th edition. You get like a package of feats now. In 3.5 edition, it was a tree. Everything was trees. So you had to get this as a precursor, and then you could choose this or this. And so you're really locked into a path to get to a specific prestige class or something like that.
Similar to a video game.
Yeah, very much so.
A skill tree video game.
Yeah. Video games emulated D&D in that regard as well. So Savage Species was great because they also introduced that you could level up, and then when it came time to pick a feat, you could pick a racial feat instead of a character class feat, which means that you could get extra troll powers or dragon powers or whatever species you were, if they had them available. And everybody, of course, all the third-party publishers went crazy with that and had basically every monster was converted. So 3.5 was really great because there was tons and tons of third-party stuff, but it also sucked because there was no drive-through RPG. There was no centralized way of finding all these products. They had to basically market them and publish them themselves without Kickstarter, without any crowdfunding. So there was a lot of really good products which nobody ever heard of, and the company never produced anything else because they were just one-shot wonders.
My main criticism that I've heard was it had a high barrier to entry. It wasn't user-friendly. It was a lot more crunchier, and it was designed for people that already liked D&D or knew how to play role-playing games. It didn't have an entry level like 5th edition. So immediately, it just didn't attract the casual player like Beck Me did. Sort of, you already felt ostracized unless you had a really good, because things like YouTube channels like you guys that teach people and stuff like that, and live plays, none of that stuff existed. So it was still a foreign concept. What a role playing game was, what Dungeons and Dragons was to the average Joe.
That's really the motivation that we had, because I was in that group of people who started doing the first streaming games and stuff. And started doing the first D&D videos because we were sick and tired of the armchair experts who hadn't played in years, who basically fronted like they were DMs and stuff. And it's just like, you guys are not like, you've read the book, but you've never actually you haven't played in 20 years. So, you know, what are you talking about? And they got very like very, very everything was a cliche conversation. They were just beating the same dead horses over and over and over again. And it just all the online communities were really boring. They were just like these, you know, obnoxious trolls and message boards and stuff. And that was pretty much people's experience when they went online to find out how to play the game. They just got gatekeeped essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, you felt very yeah. It wasn't welcoming, and it wasn't popular.
Yeah, and it was sexist.
So
it was sexist. You know, it was kind of female exclusionary. Particularly the online experience was very, you know, the early internet was a wild west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3.5 lasted until 2008 before Wizards of the Coast decided to introduce 4th edition, which is probably the most controversial edition of D&D history. I think we'll save that for a whole different episode.
Yeah.
Anything you want to reflect on?
We pretty much covered most of the things I was thinking about. We probably should talk about Spelljammer and stuff, but they kind of like more 5th edition is more relevant. Like I can talk about old Spelljammer and old
I think Spelljammer probably would be a good thing to talk about because I play with a younger group. I play with a bunch of 20-year-olds, and they don't get excited for Spelljammer. They didn't understand why we were excited for Spelljammer to come back.
Well, I can't say that I really was. I didn't think there was a need for it because I mean, it's like we already had all the
Planescape as well.
Yeah, anybody who is into those already has all those books, and they weren't going to be improved on by the company. So I don't see why anybody was getting excited about it. Much like you shouldn't be excited about Greyhawk. But Greyhawk's okay because it was. Yeah, I don't agree with Wizards of the Coast saying that it's a sword and sandal or sword and sorcery setting. It's not. It's knights and lords and castle building. It's more like MCDM's, you know, Kingdoms and Warfare sort of setting more than anything.
If you thought Forgotten Realms was vanilla, then be prepared.
Yeah,
be prepared to taste it.
Most of your enemies will be human.
At the moment, I'm more.
Yeah.
If Sword Coast is vanilla, then Greyhawk is cardboard.
Yeah.
Controversial opinion. It doesn't get more traditional fantasy than Greyhawk.
No, it doesn't. Yeah.
Well, saying that, Barrier Peaks is Greyhawk. So
true, but any planet can have a spaceship crash land. Oops, sorry, spoilers. Yeah.
Spoilers for a 40-year-old.
But then you've got Planescape, and Planescape was really quite innovative. Planescape, the idea is that this is where the idea of the multiverse came back into Dungeons and Dragons in a big way, and that's thanks to Monty Cook and Jeff Grubb and Bruce Cordell, those guys. Like Bruce Cordell basically is the godfather of mind flayers and aberrations and psionics, essentially. You wouldn't think so
to look at him as
well.
No,
he's such an innocent looking guy. You wouldn't think that he's basically a modern day H.P. Lovecraft, but he is.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at Lovecraft and you go, yeah, there's something wrong with that guy.
You look at Bruce and you think, what a well-adjusted, good-looking, 50-plus-year-old. He's only starting to look old now. I swear he's been traversing the astral planes. But so that was very, very innovative stuff, and they came up with some really, really cool things. And one of the things they incorporated with Planescape in particular was the idea of speaking in a particular way while you're playing, with a slang sort of thing and a jargon to the game. So that's one of the things, like, if you learn the jargon of the game, it locks you into the game even more.
I don't know why we keep showing each other things while we're talking, but carry on.
So at the time, one of the popular competitions to Dungeons & Dragons was, there we go, the classic.
I only got this. Sorry, I'm showing AJ.
People are always trying to tell me, what are the stats for the Lady of Pain? I said, if anybody gives you stats for the Lady of Pain, they should be beaten around the face. I only
bought this edition for the art.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even play it, but
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just showing AJ my.
I'm sorry, Tony, but I can't pronounce your. Tony Deleteria?
The hobby store edition of the latest 5e Planescape book, which I have not even read. I was just immediately going, I need that
Yeah.
because I just like the art.
Also, we're suckers for box
yeah.
sets. It's true. So Planescape was a direct response in some ways, some elements of it, to Magic the Gathering. Oh, not Magic the Gathering. Vampire the Masquerade. So Vampire the Masquerade was very popular, particularly in other countries, not just America. And it has these factions. So all the different vampire factions, all the different werewolf factions and stuff, and all that sort of, that built-in rivalry and competition and stuff. Forgotten Realms has got a bit of that with like the Harpers and the Zentarum and things like that, but Planescape is really, the factions are very, very central and focal to it.
It's monstrous factions. So it's I steal a bit of I steal a little bit of the juice from Planescape and apply it to my Skullport environment. It's the type of thing where you're walking down the street and it's not unusual to see a Mind Flayer walking past you with a Intellect Devourer on a leash. It's just, it's a city called, now how do you pronounce it? Sigil or Sigil?
Oh, it's Sigil. The reason why it is called Sigil is simply because of that whole, the same reason why they had all the jargon in there is the same reason why they pronounce it weird, is because anybody who's not from Sigil, who pronounces the word sigil, they know that they're not local. And it's like anybody who doesn't play the game, who calls it sigil instead of sigil or seagull, they don't know what they're talking about either because they haven't read the book. But it's deliberately pronounced that way in the thing, even though it sounds weird, but that's the way it is. It's one of those frustrating things. It's like it's the gatekeeping is actually built into the game itself.
You just outed me for not knowing what I'm talking about.
So the factions are philosophical factions. So they're not gangs per se. They are people that look at the universe a certain way. They think that the meaning of life is this. And that all the people that have that same point of view band together from wherever they are in the multiverse. And Sigil is this city of doors. It's a city of portals that allows you to go anywhere. So it's literally the central hub of the entire D&D multiverse. That's what they were designing. And it's a perfect adventure location for getting from one place to the other, or starting there and being a dimensional traveler, essentially. So it was also how they handle planeswalkers, which is very popular in Magic the Gathering. So you can play a Magic the Gathering sort of character who is aware that they live in a multiverse and is aware of the fact that you can create magical portals and go from here to there and stuff. So a lot of the dimension stuff and all the sort of cosmology that was around in the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, which you see in Gary Gygax's imaginings of what dimensions look like and all that sort of stuff, was advanced and brought back into the game in a big way with Sigil and Planescape.
Multiverses, so hot right now.
However,
and Mind Flayers, so hot.
However,
right now.
That being said, Spelljammer and Planescape were not one and the same thing, and they didn't gel together very well at all because they had completely different concepts of what the multiverse was. So in Spelljammer, the idea was that the worlds that you're on are basically in these great big crystal spheres that are floating in a sea of gaseous multicolored ether, which is classic steampunk. It's a steampunk game essentially. So steampunk versus a Vampire Masquerade didn't really work.
Yeah, I always think of Spelljammer as 80s Flash Gordon in my head.
Yeah, kind of. If he had a ray gun. Yeah, well, I mean, he did have ray guns and stuff. So yeah, I suppose more like classic Buckrod Flash Gordon with the the serial thing. They had that in Star Trek Voyager.
We're dropping so many old man references in this
Star
podcast.
Trek Voyager, where Harry Kim and
what's a Buck Rogers?
Yeah,
what's a Flash
it was, but it basically was like a Buck Rogers thing. But and then of course they had to get rid of the crystal spheres because they just don't work with the rest of the D&D cosmology. And I have to say, personally, I'm glad they did. I always thought the crystal spheres were stupid. Personally, I know that's not everybody's opinion. But I thought they were a ridiculous idea. Because I mean,
you probably should touch on the Lady of Pain.
yeah.
If we're going to go.
So there's a
Planescape as
few
well.
entities in Dungeons and Dragons who are classic sort of mystery entities. One is the Lady of Pain from Planescape. The other was Pale Knight from D&D, classic D&D, and the lower planes. Like Pale Knight is one of these primordial Oberth entities that got dreamed up by the Mad God a long time ago. And she's basically represented as this female figure covered in a white sheet. But if you ever get a glimpse underneath the cover, you go insane, because whatever is underneath there is just like mind-bending. Like, I don't know, it's your own mother or something like that. It snaps your brain instantaneously. I did a video on her and I had fun putting a subliminal blips of really horrific images in there.
Oh, like Fight Club type one shot.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Cool. I was wondering if is that legal? Yeah, turns out it is.
Nice.
And in Planescape, the Lady of Pain is a manifestation or perhaps a part of Sigil itself. You never see, she doesn't ever go outside of Sigil, so she's kind of trapped in it as well. But she's so mysterious, you don't even know if she is an individual. So she might be the Darbus operating a remote controlled system. She could be anything. She has no stats. She is a complete mystery. So whenever you involve the Lady of Pain in your campaign, she has these known powers and things that these effects which happen around her, and she's famous for mazing people or sending them into a subdimension maze that they usually get trapped in for the rest of their life, or just being in her shadow causes you to get sliced up, horrifically wounded just by her shadow passing over you. She famously hates being worshipped, even though she has the power to bar any god from entering the city of Sigil. One almost got there, almost got into Sigil once, or almost opposed her, but nothing ever has. Like, nothing's been powerful enough. So she's basically a plot device. She's not a game mechanic, and that's what I love about that figure.
I believe that's probably changed with the 5th edition. I'm pretty sure she's got a stat block now.
Oh, if she does, I think I'll hunt down every copy and burn it.
I can check for you if you want.
Are you sure?
No, we'll save that. I don't want to flip through a book on a podcast. It's not very good.
Well, no. I mean, if she does, add me in the comments and I'll rant for sure. Absolutely sure. Yeah, she did. She shouldn't have stats. Like, a few of them shouldn't have stats. Asmodeus shouldn't have stats. You shouldn't be able to beat Asmodeus. You shouldn't be able to beat, I don't know, the highest angel of Celestia. You shouldn't be able to beat Pale Knight. You shouldn't be able to beat Orcus. But you can.
Yeah.
Orcus in particular.
Yeah.
But yeah. And
we'll probably wrap it up there for the history. I mean, I think we'll pick it up with 4th edition. We'll probably mention Pathfinder in that as well, which is a reaction to 4th edition.
Yeah.
And we'll finish it up with 5th. So
yeah, there's a reason why we call Pathfinder D&D 3.75, because it is essentially a continuation of D&D as it was, which is, we'll get there. But we had some viewer feedback.
Yeah, we got some letters, some correspondence. Should make a little letters theme.
Yeah, it's letters time.
Okay, so this comes from Reed Pram. What is a system or game rule that should come back in the newer editions?
Minions. I really like Minions and
Minions.
Yeah, Minions in 4th edition.
From 4th?
Yeah. I really like Minions because they served a purpose. They were simple, they were easy to understand, and they made combat a lot more dynamic. And anything that adds dynamism to combat is really good. So
I think Matt Colville has added a 5th edition version of Minions in his Flea Mortals monster books, I believe.
Yeah. Well, we can talk. That's another whole podcast episode right there. Matt Colville. The Matt Colville effect. So Minions are good because they had one hit point, essentially. I'll just summarize. They had one hit point. They were goons, so you could have a whole mob of minions. They did the same amount of damage as a regular monster if they hit you, but if you hit them, they essentially are just one-hit wonders. They're designed to die as soon as you hit them. They've still got armor class and stuff, so you can actually combat them. The only difference was area effect spells don't wipe them all out. So they kind of don't have one hit point in that regard. It's a little bit weird, but they are essentially as designed to be the mooks, the goons that the bad guy sends at you, which you just cleave through with your character. And that's the fun part of the minions, is that you can literally just chop them down.
That's a word I've not heard the word mooks for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe explain what a mook is.
My name's Bob the Goblin. I'm here to stand here with I got a really intimidating sword. It's like, yeah, but I've just killed you and 5 of your friends.
I use mooks all the time. I have an answer that could immediately get us cancelled. Bring back slavery.
Oh yeah. It's like people objecting to slavery in D&D. Dude, slavery still exists today. What do you think human trafficking is called? It's slavery, okay? They're called sex slaves.
I don't want to get all.
They're called sex slaves. I don't want to get
I don't want to get on a sort of old man woke.
The idea behind Dungeons and Dragons
cancel
is to
culture,
fight evil,
sort of
not to ignore that it exists and just concentrate on your character's romance arc with a troll. It's cannibalism, slavery, those sort of things, torture. These things exist in Dungeons and Dragons because things are evil.
Yeah, I'm all about sort of having more diversity in the game. But we shouldn't be sweeping the bad shit under the rug either.
No, that's what that's the whole point of a game of the imagination is for. So you can go into dark places safely with no risk to yourself. How are you ever going to combat evil unless you don't even think about it?
Slavery was a big thing in the early editions of the games.
As we mentioned in Dark Sun, slavery is definitely a part of Dark Sun for sure. In fact, a lot of people thought that Dark Sun would never be converted to 5th edition because of the slavery aspect of it. But they kind of they just avoid talking about it.
A game's as good as its a story's as good as its villains. So this sort of we don't want to address this certain like AJ says, it still exists. So why are we avoiding these evils? I think it's healthy to have this stuff in a role playing game up for discussion. We're not encouraging people to be slavers.
No. Dungeons & Dragons is not a game designed to train you how to use a sword and shield or cast spells or, you have psychic powers or roleplay a different species from another planet, This is not even Earth we're talking about. This is a fantasy world. It's just imagination. Like it can't hurt you. It's not going to touch you in bad places. It's just, it's just talking. So, yeah, it can be it's more like what's the quote I like? Crime is the price we pay for society's freedoms. Okay, that's a pithy sort of quote. But when you apply it to a role playing game or games of imagination or something, which is designed for everybody to play, and then there's certain bad apples who will abuse the freedom that they're given. You don't penalize the entire population because of the individuals, the bad individuals. Don't make everybody pay for certain people's crimes, make them pay for them. But everybody else, give them the benefit of the doubt that we're not, that stupid or that impressionable or that precious that we can't handle some gritty evil in our campaigns to fight against. That's why we are playing heroes in the first place. Give me super bad and I'll be super good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, give me something opposite. So
playing evil characters is fine too. Playing a slaver is fine. You're not an actual slaver, You're not an actual dwarf. You're not an actual orc. You're not an actual elf. Although some people truly believe they are.
So there you go, Reed. Hope we answered that. So minions and slaves. That's their answer. Yeah.
Not the same thing. Not the same thing. Yeah. I have many minions. I've got a minion. It's called a cat. He's only got 1 hit point too.
Two opposite ends of the spectrums.
He's got 1 hit point, but he's got 9. He's got 9 character sheets.
Nerdtastic 314R8. That's he asked us a bunch of I guess they're more sort of rule type
Yeah.
questions.
He did have some interesting questions about.
I'll read them. I'll read them
Sure.
out, and you can just maybe pick and choose what ones you want to answer. So, um, he comments on the HP bloat from earlier systems until now. He wants to know if high level of play is as difficult to design for in second and third.
It's always difficult.
Yeah, skills have gone up and down in numbers. What skill systems did it the best?
Yeah.
Does bounded accuracy have a place in D&D, or is that just a 5e thing?
So
any thoughts on any of those?
I mean, he's answered his own question there, because rules, the hit point bloat is really part and parcel, and also the skill point bloat is also part of the problem with 3.5 edition. Particularly, we saw this exacerbated in 4th edition, so it's more appropriate that we talk about it later. But just in a nutshell, there was that whenever a new product comes out, and as we know, they release a lot of products, they had to be a little bit better. They had to be a little bit cooler. They had to be a little bit stronger. They had to be a little bit more powerful. The monsters had to be a little bit nastier. You know, there had to be some reason why you would switch and adopt it into your game. And that was usually very player-centric, because the Dungeon Master always had the cards in their favor in the first place because they control everything. So it was usually give the players more and more and more. So we had prestige classes and all that sort of stuff. And high-level play really was about just giving them experience points, targets, and things like that, and also giving them monsters that were, increasingly more difficult to face because the characters were getting more and more powerful. And
I think that depends.
You got to the point where
just to interrupt.
Sorry.
So just to interrupt you there. So I think that depends on. I think a lot of high level play is more role playing than combat.
Yeah. That's why it's difficult.
I just wanted to just.
That's why it's difficult to design for, because you don't know at that level. There's so much diversity in the characters, because you start like a fighter is only a basic fighter at first level. As soon as they start gaining levels, they gain options. So they really become a subclass of a subclass of a subclass. And by the time you get to high level, CR, challenge rating, which is based on a set standard party group, doesn't make any sense at all. So the baseline that you're basing it on, like your gold bullion exchange, there is no gold bars anymore because there's no homogenous characters. You don't even know how many characters are going to be in a group. So designing monsters around that mythological made up thing doesn't really make sense. So CR should disappear. It's good as a sort of this monster is appropriate for this level, but it's really not good if you're getting down into the nitty gritty of the math of the thing, because they don't even incorporate spell use or monster character classes and things like that. So the problem
I personally don't use it.
Yeah,
I don't use CR at all.
Yeah, well, I just use it as sort of a litmus test. I use it for designing monsters more than anything else. I just know what's appropriate for whatever level. You can basically boil it down to how many hit points has your character got, how many hit points has the monster got, how many hit points per round is your character capable of slicing off that monster, how many rounds do you want that monster to live to get all of its cool actions done so that you showcase that monster to all of its cool effect. You don't want the monster dying before the thing that the monster is designed to do is done, because that's a fail.
Yeah, if your players die, then you got it wrong.
Well, yeah, the dice should be the thing that kills the characters, not the monster that you're putting in front of them. It should be bad dice rolls.
No, but players like rolling characters.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. Yeah. I feel much less worried about killing a character from an experienced role player than I do about somebody who's just started the game. It's like, how many characters have you had so far? Oh, one. How many? Have you been playing this character for like months? Yeah, I played it in 3 different campaigns. It's, okay, we're not playing that character. Make up a new one.
It's something I mentioned to Ryan Doyle yesterday when I was chatting to him. Like, one of my bugbears was, the 5th edition players they're too bloody precious, man.
they just haven't had the same experience as we had. Like they think that there's just going to be gaming groups in their area, dude. Like, we'd be lucky if there's one person who knew what Dungeons and Dragons was in your region. Like, yeah. So
I think they think they're going to run this epic campaign, this epic journey all the way to level 20.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I had a guy on my Discord server who's like, "Oh, I really want to play a D&D Beck Me game from level 1 to level 20." I was like, "Okay, let's go." and we're on. I think we've gone through 3 adventures, and I think they're already overbooked with other games that they're playing. So it's just like you've got no stickability. So why should I? Oh, sure, I'll offer. Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Yeah, I saw
no chance you guys are going to
do
it.
A guy like, yeah, what adventure should I run before the Vecna one? Because I think the Vecna one goes from 10 to 20, and I'm like, fucking dude, mate. Like, if you can get to level 10, like, you're just. Why are you so stressing about a 3-year commitment?
Yeah. Play.
Just play
the Lost Mine of Phandelver, play the Ice Spire Peak, and then tell me you're ready for a campaign. Like, get through a basic adventure first before you start buying adventure books.
See if your players turn up for your first game.
Yeah.
Anyway, any more. Sorry about that. Sort of off topic to you there from a Nerdtastic's question. Anything else there?
Just I was going to say that the reason why there was so much bloat in the skills and stuff like that, like you could have skills of like 35, for instance, and the difficulty of the challenge only went up to 30, for instance. And that was because they had all those modifiers that they dumped onto ththings. So it's like, it's dark. You've got quarter cover. You're facing left. It's on your non-shield side. Your weapon speed is too slow. All these different things. It's like there's a slight drizzle, so that's -1 on this, +1 because you've got an enchantment. It's a masterwork weapon, so it's plus something. All of these different stuff was just glomped onto everything, and the dungeon master had to work all this shit out. So 5th edition players, you do not know how easy it is as a dungeon master in some regards, because you don't have to factor in all this crap. You just got advantage and disadvantage and stuff. We had +1, -1, +3, -3, and we had to remember all this crap. And we had a dungeon master screen in front of us full of charts and tables, all these little bits of information. We even had things like size categories for monsters that you don't have today. Like it went fine, diminutive, tiny, small, medium, large, huge, gargantuan, colossal, titanic, gigantic, immense, and awesome. There you go. That's all of the size categories for you. Oh, and then we get into Spelljammer, and then we've got the size categories for cosmic artifacts. So planets and things like that have size categories too.
Yeah. I think 5th edition is very player precious. It's all about the players. It's not about the DM, which is why it's
heroic fantasy, and that's kind of how it should be in regards. Yeah. Like I've got no real beef with 5th edition.
No, not at all. I don't have any beef with 5th edition. I really like 5th edition.
I mean, I've played all of these editions, so
it's easy to teach. Players seem pumped.
It's easy to write for. It's very easy to make monsters and stuff for. 4th edition was also easy, but it had electronic tools that Wizards of the Coast provided. That they had an encounter builder, they had a monster builder that automated a lot of things that they did. In that regard, they don't have official you can make monsters on D&D Beyond fairly easily. It's not as the learning curve is not as difficult as like say Roll20. Setting up a campaign on Roll20 is actually more difficult than designing a monster and running a game on D&D Beyond. I have to say it, but it's true. You don't have all the options, but again, D&D only has to concentrate on Dungeons and Dragons. It doesn't have to accommodate all the other role-playing games that use it as a platform. So they've got that going for them.
Well, thanks for the questions. If you do want to send us a question, we have a Facebook group set up. I'll probably try and link that somewhere, or just search us, Wizards and Warp Drives. Easy to find. Ask us questions in there. There is a Discord as well I have set up, but I haven't really advertised that. I'm pretty... Anything else you want to go through for this week?
No, just a plug for a book that I was involved in. I've got my name in the credits somehow. This was The Quintessential Guide to Monster Encounters, which is now print on demand. I think it's print on demand.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing this come up. Who else is in that?
So it's Mr. Tarask, who's got a channel, Wally DM, Dungeon Dad, and JVC.
Friend of the channel, Wally.
Dungeon Dad, good buddy of mine too. And JVC Perry, who's Perry? He's
Perry,
quite a good author of a lot of different products. So he's been writing for a lot of different stuff. I'm in a credit in here because I designed the Treant encounter the Treant tournament encounter, but I had to pull out because I had other commitments, and he took over from me and wrote the rest of that, which is I'm very thankful for. But that's
Nice.
basically it, and I also I've contributed other stuff.
Where can people find
so
that?
Drive Through RPG is the best place to find it, and it's a lovely book. It's got great artwork, and it's basically a big collection of encounters that you can run. And there's also some notes at the start from each of the different authors talking about their thoughts and advice on running the game design, balance, and all that sort of stuff. So they've got guides at the start, and the adventures have got a GM complexity level. They're all usually 1 or 2 pages of stuff to read, and you can pretty much run them with about 10 to 20 minutes prep. Just reading, really.
Perfect. Nice. Just reading. Yeah. That's all the game is, mate. Yeah, it's just reading.
But each of them got like the Treant encounter. The Treant tournament is you're wandering through the adventure, through the wilderness, and it's a random encounter. And there's 2 teenage Treants, essentially nerds. They would be the anorak wearing, train spotters. So talking about, model train collections. Anyway, the Treants have got infestations of insects on them that they cultivate. And then when they meet, these are basically like their war game miniatures. Then when they meet, they get their bugs and they make a little tournament area using magic. And then they have a proper tournament where like a knight on a beetle is jousting against another one. So they're like a stag beetle competition, when each person's got a champion stag beetle or, whatever. And
Warhammer.
Yeah. So essentially you come across these Treants and they go, oh, and they enchant you because they're so big and you're so small. They just play with you like a toy because they're teenagers, essentially. Fair Buds and Dankroot are the name of the Treants. So I thought it was great.
Nice.
And they transform you. You get shrunk down to insect size, and you have to compete in the tournament to win your freedom, essentially. So yeah, there's other ways that you can get out of it without jousting and stuff like that. And originally, I had all sorts of stuff that was involved in a tournament, like all the different like sideshow things and stuff. But there's like giant centipedes and stuff, and it's pretty easy to have like a dunking competition. With a trapdoor spider or various other nasty.
I'm gonna check this out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna check this out.
But all of the encounters, all of the adventures are kind of zany and fun like that. They're all like quite off the wall, not the usual sort of thing that you'd find. And
what did Wally do on it?
I'm not entirely there. I don't want to go through the entire book, but let's see. There's
be a puzzle for sure.
So Dungeon Dad did the S Faraba. I think there's flying kobolds in a minecart. There's orcs on a hydra. The rocket bog frog is great too. There's some really good artwork for that. There's all sorts. There's a flying whale, the Skytation.
Oh, nice.
Tons of stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, what's it called again?
The Quintessential Guide to Monster Encounters.
Okay, and people can find that on Drive Through RPG.
Yep. 26 pre-written encounters for 5th edition, featuring original monsters with unique abilities.
Nice. Yeah. And check out obviously friends of the podcast as well. Wally DM, How to RPG, Ryan Doyle from Verdigris Table. They've all got YouTube channels. AJ's obviously got a YouTube channel that's making content to the wee hours of the morning.
Been uploading almost damn near one. Oh, how many videos have we put out so far this month? A lot.
He's put a lot. He's been working. Join the Facebook group. If you want to send any, I'll use that for now, probably as the main source of communication. And if you want, might get your name read out in the podcast and answer your questions. Got any questions for AJ? Or myself, or just any comments or feedbacks, or you just want to tell us to get fucked, I don't care.
We can take it. Yeah, I've been on YouTube for years. Mate. I can take it.
Yeah, we're grown ass men.
I've been through the ringer. I've been demonetized. I've been socially cancelled. I've been stalked. I've been threatened. All of the.
Oh, I just declared we should bring back slavery. So
I've had people post like videos saying I'm a woke person, or I'm a commie, or I'm a Trump
yeah.
MAGA supporter. Far right,
So
far
we'll
left,
probably
center weird. You name it.
we'll take a break, I think, from D&D next week. When we'll pick it up though, we'll do fourth Pathfinder and fifth. I'm going to probably surprise this on AJ because I haven't discussed it with him. But I was thinking maybe next week. So Deadpool and Wolverine's coming out next week. I thought maybe we could go through our favorite Marvel characters.
Okay, I agree. That's a good podcast right there.
Yeah, I don't know. Pick 3, 4,
Wonder
5.
Man, Wonder Man forever. No, it's actually Black Bolt is my favorite Marvel character.
Oh yeah, save it, mate. Save it. I know you're going to have some weird ones.
Spoilers.
Mine are probably going to be a bit more vanilla. AJ can probably tell who mine are because he is can see my room and he can see predominantly
a helmet.
Who I'm into. But yeah, nothing else from me really. Just thanks everyone. This is starting to take off a little bit now. We're getting a bit of support, bit of comments. Starting to get a following, so I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you, man.
Oh, thanks.
Spending this time with me, and
I wouldn't be here if I didn't like it.
So good night from me,
and it's good night for him.
Good night. Bye. Oh shit! I hit the wrong button. I'll edit that out.